Hello, this is Dr. Ted D'Amico again. In this video, I will briefly discuss each of the top 10 media marketing research fallacies. In subsequent videos, I will discuss each of these fallacies in much greater detail. Probably the biggest fallacy in media marketing research is that demography is generally a good predictor of consumer behavior. Not only is this patently untrue, the inability of demography to predict consumer behavior is at the core of many of the other fallacies that I will be discussing. The second media marketing research fallacy is that selecting media vehicles on the basis of their efficiency of reaching a demographically defined target audience leads to substantial cost savings. This is also patently untrue for two reasons. First, as just mentioned, demography is generally a terrible predictor of consumer behavior. Second, this approach totally ignores the volume contribution of non-target members, which often can be substantial, especially when the target audience is narrowly defined. The third fallacy is that indices are appropriate statistics for developing brand profiles. As will be discussed in detail in a subsequent video, the problem with indices is that the behaviors and characteristics that can obtain high indices are those that typically account for a small amount of target users. For example, Afro-Americans index very high when it comes to sickle cell anemia. One, however, would not use this finding to describe this group because more than 99% of all Afro-Americans do not suffer from this ailment. The fourth fallacy is that most segmentation approaches help in predicting brand usage. Many, if not most, segmentation approaches group people independent of a specific consumer behavior. Consequently, if segment membership is used to predict a specific consumer behavior, one will find that such an approach will almost always fail. The fifth media marketing research fallacy is that wholesale ascription maintains the relationship among all measures in a multi-stage research study. Before discussing the problem associated with wholesale ascription, a brief definition of this procedure is in order. Wholesale ascription is when a person who doesn't participate in a given stage of a study is assigned all the results of a person who did. The assignment is largely based on the fact that the two people match on key demographic measures, for example, sex, age, and income. Because demography is a horrible predictor of consumer behavior, wholesale ascription almost always causes a marked distortion in the relationship between measures that are strongly related. For example, if reading a given tennis magazine was measured in the first stage of a research study and playing tennis was measured in the second stage, one would find that the percentage of people who played tennis and read the publication is much lower among those who were ascribed the results because they did not participate in the second research stage. In this particular case, the problem stems from the fact that demography does a terrible job in predicting consumer behavior, including whether or not people play tennis. The sixth media marketing research fallacy is that data fusion provides accurate net reach estimates for correlated media vehicles because it maintains the relationship among measures across studies. For example, fusion is often used to find out the number of people who either read a given publication and/or visit the publication's website. Before discussing the problem associated with fusion, a brief description of this approach is in order. In fusion, the results of a person in one study are assigned the results of a person in another study, primarily because the people match on key demographic variables such as sex, age, and income. As will be discussed in depth in a future video, fusion is nothing more than 100% ascription, but even worse. As a result, fusion almost always markedly underestimates the duplication of two correlated media vehicles, and as a consequence, the net reach of the combined vehicles is almost always overstated. The seventh media marketing research fallacy is based on the assumption that older consumers are set in their ways. Consequently, they should be excluded from one's media marketing and advertising efforts. In a subsequent video, I will review the findings of a study which was published in the Journal of Advertising and Research, which casts serious doubt on this assumption. The eighth fallacy is that a brand profile developed on the basis of use corresponds to a profile based on volume of money spent. This fallacy is predicated on the erroneous assumption that all users within a category are very similar in terms of their consumption and expenditure patterns. The ninth fallacy is that multimedia reach and frequency models provide accurate reach and frequency estimates in total and for individual media components. As will be discussed in depth, this is patently false for two reasons. First, because a person has an opportunity to expose to an ad, it does not necessarily follow that the person was exposed to the ad. Second, the definition of exposure differs greatly across various media types. For example, in print, a person is counted as exposed if he looks at a single page of a 100-page publication. In radio, a person counts as exposed if he listens to 5 minutes of a 15-minute segment that contained the ad. The tenth and last fallacy I will be discussing is that heavy user indices are predictive of volume consumption. Although in many categories there is a fairly strong relationship between heavy user indices and volume indices, there are many categories where this is not the case. Moreover, discounting the volume contribution of medium and light users could and does often result in substantial media inefficiencies.